Hi again. I'm going to talk to you about Christmas today. Now, as we all know, Christmas is great.
Oh, it's cliche to be cynical at Christmas.
You get to have time off work, if you have a job, which I don't. The reason I'm making this video is because I don't have a job and I need something to do with my time. You get to see friends and family. That might be a good thing or a bad thing. You get to drink and overeat. That's pretty good. And of course, best of all, you get to celebrate, the true meaning of Christmas, which is the fact there's apparently a new Star Wars movie every year now. So that's pretty good. One other thing you might want to do, I mean, if you're watching this video and you've read the description, you probably know what I'm going to say, is run a D&D game that's sort of based on Christmas or just Christmas themed, and just almost like sort of throwing a little party, basically. A couple of years ago I saw this movie Krampus, which is a really sort of fun, silly little, it's called a horror movie. It's not very horrific, it's not very scary. It's more in the sort of vein of Gremlins, really.
What kind of goat walks on its hind legs?
His name is Krampus.
Like, tons of fun. And when I watched that, I thought, man, I want to run a D&D game based on this, because you've got this kind of central villain, the Krampus, this evil Santa type creature, and you've got all his little minions, which all look pretty cool. And you've got people trapped in the snow and ice and stuff. It just seemed perfect to base a D&D game on. So I asked my friends that occasionally play D&D with, and of course none of them could make it. So that idea went to the wall. But the next year I was actually running a regular D&D game for people at my work. And it was a Curse of Strahd campaign, which I've talked about in another video. And the great thing about it was, not only was it just a little bit sort of more loose, a little bit more fun, a little bit more sort of celebratory, it was a good little break from a kind of long-running campaign. I don't think it ever got to the point where we were slogging our way through it. But, in a Curse of Strahd in particular, you're kind of trapped in this misty horror world. And there's no sort of getting away from it. So you're always in the same milieu, basically. So to kind of jump away from that for 1 week and do a completely different game with different characters and stuff was great. So I wrote an adventure for that, and I've put that adventure together for the DM's Guild, and that's called In the Black Midwinter. So it is actually on as pay what you want, and I think a lot of people paid nothing. Which, why wouldn't you? But if you do get it, if you do have a read through it, and if there's any part of it you think you can use, or if you're going to get an evening's entertainment out of it, maybe consider paying something for it. Either way, I just think it'd be really great if someone got to use it. But whether you do that or not, I'm just going to talk about a few little ways you can approach a game in the way that I did. So I'm talking about Christmas, but it doesn't necessarily need to even be at Christmas that you do these little one-offs. I think, like I say, with our Curse of Strahd campaign, you're kind of fully entrenched in the story. It's just nice to have these little breaks every now and again, and I think something like Tales from the Yawning Portal is great because it's got these one-off adventures in there. And obviously there's hundreds of games on the scenarios or adventures on the DM's Guild that you can pick up. If you are doing something like Curse of Strahd, or maybe Tomb of Annihilation, which I've not run, but I'm interested in doing it. I'm excited about the prospect of doing it. they feel very locked, and you're in the same location, and there's no sort of prospect for getting away for what you would consider a one-off. So you'd either need to use new characters or create a sort of little pocket universe situation, go through a magic mirror, that kind of thing. Now, I've been reading Storm King's Thunder, and I'm really kind of keen to run a Storm King's Thunder campaign, and I think that's sort of custom built for this sort of thing, really sort of dropping in and out of adventures, jumping back into the main plot, and then jumping out and doing, you know, a couple of one-offs. I think it's a really interesting adventure structure. I didn't get it for ages, but I think I'm going to go for that. So that's something else you can think about anyway. I mean, another way of doing it, which is something else I've thought about, is having two different groups of characters. So, you know, you might get your players to roll up an extra character, and then, you know, one week you just say, well, we're jumping away from the main plot, and maybe it's taking place in another part of the world, you know, or maybe it's approaching the campaign from a different point of view. But I think that's a really sort of nice way to sort of break up a campaign. Now, if you don't have a regular group, getting friends together at Christmas might be a really good way to introduce them to D&D. Obviously, you'd have to sort of dial back on the complexity, maybe get rid of initiative, and just kind of concentrate on, you know, the basics for a D&D game. So, you know, if you're going to theme it around Christmas, obviously there's millions of familiar Christmas stories you can base things on. I mean, there's the obvious one.
You will be visited by free spirit.
Was that the chance of hope that you mentioned, Chicken?
It was.
Oh, well, in that case, never mind. I think I'd rather not.
I mean, but there's lots of things in folklore, and I'm not even necessarily talking about kind of Christian folklore. Do we call it folklore? You know, whether you're a fan of Jesus or not, you know, Christmas sort of arose out of, you know, kind of earlier kind of folk beliefs and folk festivals, and the Krampus thing is perfect. You know, I mean, it almost writes itself. I mean, not to do myself down for the adventure I wrote, but it pretty much wrote itself. So Krampus, as a kind of figure of folklore, comes from Austria and Bavaria and those kind of that area of Europe. But there's other characters in European folklore. Principally, I was looking at Icelandic folklore, and they have these characters called the Yule Lads. They're 13 dwarf-like characters. One comes every night in the lead up to Christmas, and they all have sort of these idiosyncratic little tricks that they do. One of them will steal your sausages. One of them is very small. I think that's his only characteristic. Some of them kind of peek at you through the window. Bit of a perv. There's one called Door Slammer, who just slams doors. I think one bothers sheep. Obviously, I guess people were concerned about their sheep being bothered. But yeah, they're all these kind of little mischievous rather than malevolent creatures who just come and muck about. But you take that into a sort of D&D fantasy world, you know, you've obviously got a jumping off point there to create the, you know, a little gang, maybe a gang for Krampus, who can, you know, get up to all sorts of things. Iceland also got the Christmas cat, which I think comes and if you're not wearing new clothes on Christmas Day, I guess it eats you or something. There's hundreds of these things from these folk traditions that are just absolutely ideal for if you're thinking about a kind of medieval fantasy land. The sorts of superstitions that they would have, you can just bring them in as creatures, throw them against your players, not necessarily to fight against, these just kind of maybe cause complications. But yeah, I liked the Yule Lads, so I just kind of completely lifted those and turned them into kind of evil dwarves. And most of them, by themselves, they're not much of a threat, but obviously get them together, or if you're a sheep, I suppose they're quite a bit of a threat. And also, you've got a lot of things in popular culture as well that you can grab from. There's a lot of great Christmas music.
Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me! Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me!
There's a lot of, great Christmas movies.
All aboard!
I know absolutely everything, Frank. You see, I'm the ghost.
Whether you want to have your references kind of deeply hidden, or whether you want them thinly veiled, like a lot of mine in my adventure, your players will probably get a kick out of spotting these things. I think D&D just really sort of lends itself to kind of humour, really. You're getting together with friends or like-minded people, and you're just sort of making shit up around a table when you break it down. So it does tend to be sort of funny. So I tried to make my adventure kind of quite humorous. You might want to kind of go overboard on like making props. We had a little kind of Santa decoration which we use as inspiration Santa. Normally you just note your inspiration down on your character sheet, but I actually threw this thing to my players whenever they got inspiration. You might want to kind of make little presents and make that kind of part of the game. That's sort of a nice thing to do. Mulled wine, mince pies. I don't know if people in America eat mince pies. I don't think they do. We use miniatures in our games, and one of the monsters in my adventure is a snow golem. It's just a snowman that throws magic snowballs at you. But for the miniatures, I bought some cake decorations, cake toppers, little sugar snowmen, which were coincidentally the perfect scale for your D&D minis. So I used those, and of course, when your players kill them, they can eat them. One of the other things that I did, I wanted a kind of very silly one-off. And so I like the idea of the deck of many things, and one of my players has actually made a deck of many things, I think for a LARP. And so I thought, well, if you got access to a real deck of many things, well, why the hell would you not use it? So I sort of rewrote everything, and I called it the deck of merry things, and I'd have kind of Christmassy effects. So for my adventure in the Black Midwinter, I've actually drawn up a full deck, and they're available to sort of print out, and you can properly make the deck up. And I think a lot of people, they like the deck of many things because it's this thing from D&D's history, but it does have a tendency to break your game or break your characters. But in a one-off, that's sort of what I was going for, really. No one was banished to the nine hells, so that was good. I like the randomness that's sort of inherent in D&D games. So the deck of many things really sort of ties into that. So as I say, I've written this adventure, but there's so much in kind of basic D&D and the monster manual that you can just kind of slightly reskin and use in your games. When I wrote my adventure, I was very inspired by adventure game book from the 80s called Caverns of the Snow Witch. And I was it was of the Fighting Fantasy game books, I think that was, they all had fantastic art, but I think the art in that was one of the best. I'm completely blanking on the names of the artists who worked on it, but very sort of beautiful, almost woodcut inspired art. So when I came to do the art, in my adventure, I kind of try to reference that a bit, and there's a few kind of verbal references in there. And I think oftentimes when you write stuff, you put stuff in for your own amusement. If anyone else catches it, it's great. But I mean, I'm sure there were a few other things I was thinking of. Yeah, lots of references to Christmas movies. See how many you could spot. But as I say, this is a thinly veiled ad for you to buy my adventure, or just get it for free. Yeah, I'm not expecting to make my millions out of this, but as I say, it would be great if someone else used it. So that is my advice for running a D&D game at Christmas. Or you could just really be weird and do it sort of in summer. But go to the link, download it, use all of it, and let me know how it went. I'd be really, really interested, because I say we only played it once, so we just had one session of playtesting. So, it, you know, to be fair, it is sort of designed to be unbalanced and game breaking, but just have fun with it. And yeah, there you go. That's my advice. See you later.